Hi everybody, I'm John with Radenso, and I'm coming to you today from a completely empty and fairly lonely Radenso HQ. As most of you know, Ohio has been, all non-essential businesses in Ohio have been essentially shut down. You're only allowed to have pretty much one employee in the office at a time to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And before we get started, I just want to wish all of you the best of health, and hopefully everybody here is complying with their sanitation guidelines given by their state and local governments. We're all in this together to get through it as fast as we can, and we all have to do our part to protect our first responders and medical providers who are really out there kind of heroically battling this thing in the field. As a result of this shutdown, we're not going to have a usual formal video this week with me and Mindi. We're doing social distancing, obviously. And a lot of stuff has kind of been disrupted here, but I figured it would still be good for me just to kind of do an on-the-fly video, answer some questions that you guys have submitted on RD form, and just kind of talk, kind of off-the-cuff, casual style. So apologies, no fancy video this week, but I am looking forward to kind of answering some of the questions that you guys have. Before we do that, I do want to mention a couple of things. First is that we do still have Pro-Ms for sale on our website. I know Amazon is sold out, I think, of some of them, but our website is still operating as normal. We've managed to set up fulfillment where we don't have to endanger anybody or get within a certain distance to do that. So if you are looking to get a Pro-M, we are up and running on our website. But other than that, I think, we all got to kind of hang in there and keep sight of what's important. Another thing I wanted to do before getting into the questions is just point you guys to the Theia FAQ, frequently asked questions. We're getting a lot of the same questions about Theia, and that's great. I'm super excited everybody's interested. But we put together a FAQ that you guys can look at. It's located on RD form in the main Theia introduction thread, but we've also put it on our website. This is where you can find answers to a lot of common questions like, does Theia have arrows? Yes. When will Theia be released? We're honestly not sure, and most of it's because of the coronavirus right now. What price will Theia be? Again, we're not sure because we don't know what price our suppliers are going to charge us for this stuff now that the global supply chain shut down. So a lot of common questions like that you can find an answer to, and we do update that on a regular basis. So with that being said, I guess let's get into it. I've got my laptop here and logged on to RD form, and I'm just going to scroll through the thread. I haven't prepared anything and just kind of answer questions and one-on-one, and hopefully we can get to most of them. So we got Techno-Rave, of course, right off the bat. How about long range? Very funny. Vortex. What are some of the most surprising things you found out once you started manufacturing your own radar detectors? That's a great one, actually. So there's a million surprises that we had, and I'll expand this to be designing instead of not just manufacturing. But I think the biggest surprise that I had was how much I wish I hired mechanical engineers earlier in the process. We've got really, really, really good electrical engineers, good DSP guys, good FPGA guys, but us and some of our partners shared mechanical design resources. And it definitely set us back a little bit, just time-wise, having to share resources and not having mechanical design in the same room. It's going great. I mean, it's going to turn out well, but I could have saved a lot of time if I had somebody super skilled in-house to do that, dedicated as their job, instead of sharing resources with other types of engineers on that. As far as other surprises, I think... I don't know. I mean, I went through a lot of surprises with the no photo the first time, thinking everything would happen faster than it really does. And I think I learned from a lot of mistakes then. So I don't think there's been insane surprises, just so much as learning experiences that we can take forward and implement how we change things going forward to make it better for everybody. We got... As mentioned in other Theia threads, how about discussing hardwiring, hardwire components, etc., and dealing with cars that have auto start stop? It's a really good question. We've had a lot of people ask about that. As you know, Theia is going to be not a 12-volt based radar detector. So traditionally you have detectors with the RJ jack. That's a 12-volt power source that comes from a cigarette lighter or maybe a mirror tap. Theia is a little bit different, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But because we're using USB-C, it's actually going to be closer to a 5-volt source. Now, we are going to take measures to make things easy for you to hardwire it. For our direct wire kits, we're going to include a little device, it's literally about that big, that will convert 12 volts down to 5. So you can still hardwire it or mirror tap it or do whatever you want, just like you have a traditional radar detector. You don't have to worry about finding a USB specific or a 5-volt source. As far as auto stop start, that really hasn't been an issue for most Radenso products. I think even our current stuff has really good design on the power supply side. I'm a little surprised that detectors have a problem with this. I mean, I understand why, but as you see with the new V1 integrating the brownout booster, and that stuff can all be done internally. It really shouldn't be a problem if the electronics are designed correctly. So as far as the power supply side goes, I'm pretty comfortable that, except for having to use a USB-C cable instead of an RJ cable, it won't really be that much different to power it than it traditionally will. Boot up times, another good one. So you've heard me say Theia is a computer running Linux, and that's true. But this is something that I've been really worried about since day one, because I don't think anybody wants to wait 2 minutes for your radar detector computer to boot up. One of the ways that we got around that was having, frankly, our brilliant software engineer design a custom version of Linux for Theia. Just like most versions of Linux, it shares the components with tons of other distros, but we've got pretty much everything custom written on it. Everything that is not necessary has been stripped out to make it lightweight and fast and reliable and easy to boot. I think you're going to see, don't quote me on this yet because it's not 100% done, but I think you're going to be seeing boot times measured in seconds, not minutes. I think it's going to be, honestly, not that much different than a traditional radar detector, maybe 2 or 3 seconds longer. But so far it's performing very well. How many arrows will Theia have? Oh, beer, Wan Kenobi. It's going to have the traditional amount of arrows. You'll have forward and backwards and front and rear. We're not, or side to side. We're not going to do anything crazy with 1,000,000 arrows. And then you also wanted to know, how do we go about field testing, and do you use beta testers external to Radenso? There's some stuff that we just usually try not to talk about. That's one of them. But what I will say is that we do extensive testing, and we have plans to make sure that these things are tested in every environment that the customer is going to be operating them in. So we definitely focus on that. Let's see here. V1 Jake, how do you plan to have Theia alert to the various radar signatures? And also an unidentified signal. How many bars will be used for the signal strength graph? This is something that I'm going to leave up to the user. I mean, obviously we'll ship it in a default way, but I don't really have a problem if people want to change the behavior of the detector to suit whatever their preference is. One of my big fears with Theia, especially because it's going to be so quiet naturally, not alerting to BSMs, that I'm afraid that people aren't going to trust it. They're going to think it's not working. And because of that, and because this is a new technology using AI, I think if Theia ever miscategorizes a police gun as a false alert and therefore doesn't alert and someone gets a ticket, I think people won't trust the entire technology platform. So we're going to err on the side of caution when we're first shipping it. And instead of only whitelisting, I'm pretty sure right now what it's going to be is a mix of whitelisting and blacklisting, and then we'll also have an unknown class. Basically, we'll always alert for something, but we're never going to tell you that a false alert is 100% not a police gun unless it's 100% sure it's not a police gun. As for the second part of your question, how many bars will be used as a single strength graph? For the default configuration, I'm not sure if it's actually going to be bars. We're looking at displaying it in a more granular fashion. I know that we're using percentages for a lot of our UI. For example, you can adjust volume not in steps, but on a 0 to 100 percentage. And I just think it gives people more control. So that's one thing that we're going to try to do as well, anywhere that we can. But again, that's something that you can change, and who knows, maybe down the road we'll have various options that the user can customize however they like. How much Monster and bourbon has been consumed to date in the creation of Theia? Will there be a startup sound for Theia? And if so, will it sound like Mindi singing? Truthfully, there has been a lot of Monster and a lot of Red Bull consumed to date. I tend to prefer Monster Ultra Zero. Our engineers tend to prefer Red Bull and Red Bull sugar-free, so it's been a point of contention internally. Clearly, I'm right. Monster Ultra Zero is better. But bourbon, there's been less than energy drinks, but a fair amount of that as well. And then I think, what else is our drink of choice? I think Mindi is a vodka soda lime girl, and a fair amount of champagne has been drank as well. It's just what happens when you spend 18, 20-hour days sometimes at the office, although we try not to do it during business hours. As for the Theia startup sound, we are actually going to plan lots of Easter eggs for sure. This is something that I'm kind of selfishly excited about, having in-house engineering and being able to program stuff here. We have a lot of ideas that we've all been keeping track of for Easter eggs, and I want to try to figure out some like reward if people who finds them first, or to incentivize you guys to look for them, just as a fun thing. Do you plan to produce a product in-house in addition to Theia for laser protection and expand? Will you integrate with ALP like you do with RCM? Right now, we're totally happy with ALP. It's the best on the market, so we haven't really put any resources into going that way. We're focused on trying to take over the radar market. But I do plan on integrating ALP with Theia. Obviously, there's got to be back and forth cooperation, but we've got a good relationship with Tom over at Best Radar Detectors. Does a really good job selling stuff for the community. So I think this is something that's going to happen. It should be pretty cool. What sort of neural network structure does Theia use? That's a good question. I will say that Sterling, our AI engineer, is much more equipped to explain that than I am. We've tried a bunch of different stuff, but right now, technically, it's just a deep convolutional neural network. We've tried lots of techniques, transfer learning. We've looked into recurrent stuff. We've looked into anything that's kind of state of the art. But the network is one that we custom built. It's not based on ResNet or any of the other big neural network structures that are open source. This is a custom designed neural network specifically for detecting radar. Does Theia, kind of also in that vein, does Theia just take raw image data of the signal like we see on the software-defined radio as input, or is there a level of pre-processing done to the data before it's fed to the neural network? That's a great question. And the answer is that we do pre-process it before it gets to the neural network. That's what we use the FPGA for. We talked about it a little bit last week in the video, but the cool thing about running our DSP in the FPGA is that it's kind of like a buffet menu of the AI can say, I want to see a signal this way, and the FPGA can deliver it that way. Or maybe it wants to see a signal in a totally different way. It can do that as well. So we're running multiple DSP engines on the FPGA, and then the AI can pick and choose what picture it wants to get sent to it based on the type of signal. It's really, really neat stuff. Let's see, what else do we have here? Will users be able to cut back sensitivity to avoid getting several mile alerts? Yeah, I have no problem with that. I know that in our UI, we already actually do have a sensitivity adjustment built into that. How did you meet Michael and come to acquiring Radenso? That's a really good story. We've been super lucky at Radenso finding great people from day one, with me just running into Michael all the way up until now. And I moved to a little town, Independence, Kentucky, years ago, about 20 minutes south of downtown Cincy. And back when I was selling the no photo, somebody in Independence purchased a no photo. And I said, why is anybody in my little town, which has no automated enforcement, purchasing a no photo? So I called them up and said, hey, I would love to drop off your order, take you out to lunch. Just, you're a local supporter. I'd love to meet you. And it turns out that it was Michael Berg, who was the founder of Radenso. I had no idea that we lived 10 minutes from each other. So just because of that coincidence and me reaching out, trying to take a customer out to dinner, or out to lunch rather, we ended up meeting up, and he told me about his plans for Radenso, and we realized that we both thought a lot of the same way. We had a lot of the same values, and I knew from that first lunch that I wanted to find a way to get involved with Radenso and acquire it, and give them the company the capital that it needed to compete successfully in the radar detector industry. And it's been a pleasure getting to know and working with Michael and Bia over the last few years, and now continuing to work with them as co-owners. They have equity in Radenso. So it's pretty cool story, and it makes me smile just how coincidental it was. I mean, all of this could never have happened if Michael didn't order a no photo off my website. Nano, where do you come from business-wise? How and why did you decide to build a radar detector company? Which product development was the right thing to do? Wow, there's a lot of questions. How much work was it to make a EU one compatible to the US? How do you order? Let's take a few of these. I'm not sure I can get to them all. As far as business-wise, I actually don't have a formal business background. I don't think anybody at Radenso has a business degree, and some of us don't have college degrees either. But what we do have is a lot of experience in learning how to solve problems and take care of our customers. Personally, I do have a college degree, but it is a piano performance degree for classical piano. I did grow up surrounded by a business culture. My father was kind of an entrepreneur, so I was very, very lucky to be introduced to some of these concepts early in my life. And I've seen what happens when you fail. I've seen what happens when you succeed as an entrepreneur, and it's something that I just always kind of knew that I didn't want to work for anybody else. I thought for a while that I would be an entrepreneur through being a professional classical pianist. When I invented the no photo in college, I kind of realized that I would rather keep piano as a hobby and do this as a business. And that's worked out really, really well for me so far, balancing both of those. And I think a lot of our executives as well. I mean, Mindi was an Apple executive. Jason was one of the best-selling BMW M salesmen in the United States, specifically in the Midwest for sure. Randy has a deep e-commerce background, but none of us are kind of the traditional MBA type people. It's more that we've been successful figuring things out for ourselves, and I think that's one of the things that I really, really enjoy about the team that we've put together. We try to keep it kind of a meritocracy and as opposed to a bureaucracy. How many customers are enthusiasts? Again, by Nano. It's a good question. I would say very, very few. I would say definitely low single-digit percentage. I mean, it's hard to put a number on it. But yeah, it's not a lot. But I do think the enthusiasts have an important role in pushing the industry forward, as well as kind of being like the first mover in sales. So yeah, you guys on RD Forum don't buy thousands or even hundreds of detectors, but you're influential. People find out about detectors because of you, and that does have value, I think, for any business to take advantage of it. As far as how and why I decided to build a radar detector company, as I mentioned, part of it was I got lucky meeting Michael, but radar detectors was something that I've honestly loved since I would say even shortly before I could drive. I remember I got a speeding ticket 3 days after I got my license, and we just graduated, or I think I just graduated from high school, or maybe I was a junior, and I had a Ford Escape. It wasn't even a fast car, and I got ticketed for like 4 over the speed limit, and I read in the paper that they were doing a sting during graduation week to promote safe driving. And I remember when I got stopped, I was so furious that I had gotten caught in basically a sting for going 4 miles per hour over. Literally an hour later, I went home and I ordered a Valentine 1, which is my first radar detector. And that made me an enthusiast, and I got onto all of the original forums. I actually met Randy. I messaged Randy over a decade ago, and we didn't even know each other. Just he was part of Guys of LiDAR. So I've kind of been involved in the community forever, and it's always been a big passion of mine. And I've always been a huge enthusiast of just technology. I love hardware, especially. On the computer side as well. And building a radar detector company was something that really allowed me to combine a lot of my passions and a lot of my strengths. And with the people that I can work with, they can offset a lot of my weaknesses. So I don't know, I think it was just a good fit for us, and I enjoy kind of being this small group of 10 or 15 people that are just kind of slicing and changing and making waves in this industry that has been pretty boring for a long time. Would you do it all again? Yeah, absolutely. I was actually thinking the other day, somebody was talking about how if they won the lottery, they would be on a beach retired. And I was talking to one of our engineers, and I was like, honestly, if I won the lottery, I would just come and do the exact same thing, except I would just fund everything myself out of pocket. I mean, if I won the lottery, I would still want to bring Theia to market. I would just do it with less financial constraints. And that's a pretty cool thing. And that's something that I think a lot of our team feels. It really doesn't feel like work most of the time. I'm not saying it's never stressful. It's really stressful. But frankly, I really like going to work. How long will it take until radar detectors are obsolete? That's a good question. I think it'll be a while. If you put a gun to my head, maybe 20 years. But I think it'll be a slow descent, kind of, mostly caused by automated driving. And I actually think insurance companies will be the ones that push out being able to drive your own car. They'll price it higher as self-driving gets riskier than automated driving, which will unfortunately push self-driving, like humans driving a car, to something in the realm of a luxury that the wealthy can do. I hope it doesn't happen. It's just kind of off the cuff. Mock-up of what the exterior of body will look like. Sorry guys, I'm not ready to show you that. That'll probably be one of the last things that we show, just because it's one of the last things to be finalized. Given gun ID and known radiated power, do you think you can calculate distance? I don't want to say we never can, but I'm pretty sure we never can. Theia is a radar detector. Laws of physics don't change, unfortunately. I'm pretty sure that it's going to be very difficult for us to determine distance, if at all possible, so don't bet on it for sure. Play something on the piano for us. Not today. I'm sure I could be persuaded to eventually, but I got to practice more first. How about sharing a list of your favorite bourbons? That I can do. My all-time favorite is Smooth Ambler, Old Scout, 10-year, specific barrel, 4117. That is tied with OKI, barrel number 224. I know it sounds crazy, but I don't just like bourbon brands. I like specific barrels that these guys have put out. Those are both discontinued. As far as currently produced ones, I like George T. Stagg, William LaRue Weller, anything that's part of the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. For like a lighter summer bourbon, Blanton's is pretty good. But unfortunately, a lot of what I like is super expensive and hard to find, so I don't have as much as I wish I did. Does Theia have any countermeasures against new guns that haven't been trained, or will those guns just not be alerted to? As I mentioned, we're going to put safety measures in place so that it will still alert. But luckily, new guns don't come on the market that often, and RD Form is usually super on top of it, so we'll know about it as soon as it does. And it's usually trivial for us to go obtain one of those and push an update. So I'm not super worried about that. I think it's going to be harder for us to do a 100% whitelist model initially, just because we're starting from zero. But once, down the road, once that's built, then it just becomes a matter of updating it like anything else. And I mean, ALP has shown that it's possible for a small company to do a pretty good job with that. Some manufacturing questions. SimCool wants to know if we're going to be building all units in-house, or will they be built by third-party manufacturers, and then what our production volume is per week. So Radenso doesn't own a factory. We're way too small for that. A factory would cost probably $150 million plus staffing. So yeah, it will be built by a third-party manufacturer. We're trying to figure that stuff out right now. As far as production volume, I don't think that'll be an issue. I mean, we should be able to produce thousands of them a week if we needed to. I think we're not going to sell thousands of them a week. No radar detector sells that many, besides maybe some entry-level Cobras. But if we need to, we can produce them. Here's a really good question. This is by Biohazardous. How has having a close relationship with the enthusiast community helped, hurt, influenced Radenso's outlook for product development, marketing, consumer relations, competitor relations, etc.? The enthusiast community, specifically RD Forum, drives the majority of business decisions that we make, even though it doesn't drive the majority of sales. Yes, there will be times when we do something that, the forum community wishes that we didn't, but we try to minimize that when we can. And the reason why is because I do think it is a competitive advantage to build a product that the most knowledgeable consumers want. I think you have to balance that with ease of use, but it's easy to do that just by having like an expert mode or even intelligent user interface design. Having RD Forum is almost like having an entire product development and focus group in-house, except we don't have to pay for that. And it's an incredible resource. We're really grateful to that. And I think there's goodwill that gets developed when we make an honest effort to listen and implement what the community wants, and then the community is grateful back and supports us. I mean, no company is perfect. Companies are going to have problems. Maybe a product comes out that's bad, but if there's goodwill built up and there's an environment of trust instead of animosity, I think it works better for everybody. Like there's a lot of things in Theia that, or even that we've done in firmware on some of our existing detectors that I would personally never use. But you guys have changed my mind on the use case for those. I don't know. I just really believe in kind of the grassroots word of mouth style of running your business, and we don't really advertise in Car and Driver or any of those big magazines, and it's just been word of mouth about our products and our people that have driven the growth of the company. It's harder to build a company that way for sure. There's no shortcut. You can't. I mean, every day is trial by fire, right? If you burn the community, then you can wipe out years of goodwill. But likewise, that makes it tough for any other competitor to just come in and take over that spot on day one. So I don't know. We love it. I mean, a lot of us have been on the forums for a decade now, and it's cool to. I don't know why other companies aren't taking advantage of it, to be honest with you. Us participating in the forum doesn't preclude another company from doing that. And I mean, why wouldn't you? I just don't get it. What options are you considering to provide third-party integration support, SDKs, open API, etc.? So we're going to do whatever we can to try to make it easy for people to integrate with Theia. Just due to manpower, I doubt we're going to have like an incredibly polished, fully documented API on launch, but it's definitely something that we're looking at doing. You already know it's going to be open source. It's going to be open API. We want to make this the most easily extensible detector out there. It just might take a little bit because we only have so many engineers as a small company. How fast do each of you drive on the road relative to PSL? Well, in the United States, I never speed, ever. But occasionally when I go to Mexico, I'll definitely sit a good bit over the speed limit. I don't know. It depends. I don't want to incriminate myself to the Mexican authorities on camera, but I sit at a pretty good clip, or at least I did before the statute of limitations expired. Of the current crop of windshield detectors out there, excluding Radenso products, what would you buy? I think I'd buy an R7, to be honest with you. I think it's the best. All detectors have weaknesses, but I think the R7 is the best compromise of everything right now. So that would probably be my pick. Do any of us have race experience? So I don't want to lie and call it racing experience. A lot of us have done time trials. A lot of us have a lot of experience doing high-performance driving events. A couple of us are instructors for those events. And those are on a racetrack with other cars, with open passing, without point buys. But that's a little bit different than like what is an actual sanctioned race, semi-professional or professional race. So I know that if it just comes to track experience, Randy, Mindi, me, and Jason all are fairly experienced on track. We've been on tracks all over the country. So yeah, it's fun. Booze Hound. What was the reaction from others in the company when you explained your idea for Theia? Approximately how much it would cost to manufacture and the implications that it had on sale price. Guessing you had to hand out some heartburn meds. Yes and no. So Theia wasn't really 100% my idea. Theia was the natural extension to solving problems that cropped up in everyone's daily business life. Whether it was a firmware update that we really wanted quickly that couldn't come quickly, or support calls about changing something in software that again, we couldn't get done quickly. Whether it was delays and shipping problems from overseas. And I think every single person, whether it was Mindi or Jason promising a deal or something that we thought we could do and then we ended up not being able to deliver on, or the support staff getting hammered with calls about certain things, to me, just being annoyed that we couldn't make the best detector on the market. I think I went around one day and I just asked everybody, what's the biggest hurdle that prevents you from being successful and happy at work? And every single employee said it was related to something that we didn't have control over. So I said, okay, I know this sounds risky, but if we don't do this, I believe that we'll fail. If we don't innovate, I believe that we will fail. So embarking on an ambitious development project like this, even though we didn't know where the funding would come from, or we knew there was a pretty good chance that we would go out of business doing it, as risky as that is, as scary as that is emotionally, it's actually not a risk at all if you believe that you will fail if you don't do it. And I think that's a rare mindset in business, and I'm so grateful that the people here at Radenso are able to get on board with that and understand it intuitively, because I think that's what lets us take risks, not reckless risks, but risks that hopefully will pay off that other companies might be too large or too slow or too risk averse to take. And Theia was definitely one of those situations where we all said, we don't know how we're going to do this. It seems impossible. We don't have engineers. We didn't have money. We didn't even know what we were doing. But we said, this is what we need to do. And then when I look back here and we've pulled off so much and we're on the verge of delivering it, it's pretty incredible, and it's a testament to how betting on yourself and betting on your team, if you have the right people, can really, really pay off. So I'm really, really proud of the team and what they've accomplished. And we also got lucky, but I don't know, I'm just proud of them. How has the COVID-19 public crisis impacted your business and the ability to deliver Theia to the market? It sucks. It really sucks. I try to keep perspective that me selling some radar detectors is not the biggest thing that the world has to deal with right now. I mean, there's a lot of people that are sick and dying. So I just try to remind myself that when we are dealing with the business problems that it puts forward. But yeah, I mean, sales are way down. It slowed down development. The supply chain's tough. Parts are on long lead time. A lot of factories that we use to prototype are closed. This is one of the reasons that people say, why don't you give a release date? Well, I'm glad we didn't give a release date of spring for Theia, because we would have missed it. Who would have thought a global pandemic would come and shut down the whole world? So yeah, it's had a huge impact on our business. But again, we've got a good team, and we'll get through it, and we'll come out on the other side of this stronger, just like hopefully a lot of people will. I think this video is getting a little bit long. You guys are probably bored by now, so we'll take one more to wrap up. And this is from Hidden Cam, and he said, how important is industrial espionage countermeasures to your business, and are you worried with the amount of information that you share that this will all be out there for competitors to exploit? So when we first started this, we were pretty worried about that. We took a lot of precautions, ranging from how we set up our IT networks, to, our Wi-Fi security, and tried to control some information coming in and out of the building. But once we understood the scope of how difficult what we're doing is, and it's really extraordinarily difficult from an engineering standpoint on every level, I actually became less and less concerned about that. And that's one of the things that when we started throwing around the idea of open source, we just don't think anybody else can engineer this. So we're still going to try to protect ourselves on the patent side of things. But even if we publish all of our source code, you still have to have engineers that know how to use it. And you still have to have the funding to build something like this. You still have to have an AI guy, a DSP guy, an FPGA guy who's as good or better than we do. And you're going to have a 2-year disadvantage compared to how long that our head start is. So I used to be very worried about that. But as the complexity of the project started to be more understood by me and our team, I'm just less worried about it, because I don't think anybody else is going to put the resources into trying to make a good product just for the hell of making a good product when it doesn't have as big of a market as a Cobra detector. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll look back at this and feel like an idiot in a few years if somebody else comes out with a new Uber detector that's better than Theia. But as I said, you got to put your eggs in a basket and take a risk and make the decision to move forward, and that's what we did. So I think that's pretty much it for today. I appreciate you guys bearing with us as things have slowed down due to COVID. And again, I wish everybody here the best of health. Be safe. Use hand sanitizer. Wash your hands. Let's all do our part and try to get this over with as soon as possible. Hopefully I'll be able to do another video next week. Until then, be safe and good luck, everyone.